Hello, Knights of Nia. I'm back. I've been on quite a roll lately and wanting to share some of the insights that I feel that I am gaining every day with you guys. Again, it's all a journey and it's kind of sad and boring to do it on our own. So, couple things. I reached out to Jay from Access 12. Just kind of on a whim. I do that a lot. I'm an impulsive extrovert at times. And we had a super interesting talk. I think we ended up talking for over 3 hours about life and trauma and psychology and just all the things that I guess people like us like to geek out on. And he had some interesting insights for me because at that point I was still kind of waffling between am I an FINE or an NEFI, and just not really sure, not feeling like either one was a great fit. And I, asked him his opinion. He was very gracious to check out my videos. I don't know what video we looked at, but he looked at my channel. And he was like, oh yeah, you're an FINE. And I was like, okay. Again, I don't know why it's such a big deal to me. I mean, honestly, when I really think about it, I seeing myself as an ENFP would actually be kind of ridiculous because I really am an introvert. I'm just kind of an impulsive one. But anyways, so he had some interesting insights. I like that he, go check out his channel. He's been releasing a lot of new content lately. Just kind of focusing in on functions. And he really took voltology and he's doing a lot of interesting things. I really don't understand a lot of the terminology. I just kind of get an overarching picture and run off with it. But I mean, he's got a lot of terminology about integrating and reverse modes and antagonizing modes. I don't understand it all, but he's doing a lot of great stuff. Check it out for you people who have a good attention span and like to go in depth with stuff. But he did a short report where he looked at 20 seconds of function signals that I was throwing off. And he said that my FI and NE signals were both obviously the highest, and they were almost equal, with FI just beating out NI by 1 point. And when he was looking at my modes, he was like, you kind of cycle through JIPE, JE, and then you just kind of circle around you're almost avoiding your PI, which in my case would be SI, introverted sensing, or introverted sensation as he calls it. And I just thought that was really interesting how our minds, and this is what he's looking at, how we can, I'm really of the belief that we have a function stack. We have 4 functions, right? And we tend to favor some over the other ones and have an antagonistic relationship with maybe some of them. I know a lot of people go nuts with your shadow self, your alter ego, your shadow functions, your demon function. I'm like, can we just stick with understanding our basic functions? And I don't know, I get overwhelmed. But anyway, so what he saw with me is I had very little PI going on. Almost like my psyche is circling around. In my case, it would be with my FI, NE, and TE, and just completely circumventing SI. which really, really makes sense if you know me and my personality. Um, so that gave me a whole bunch more food for thought. So Jay, thank you so much for that. You're awesome. I really love what you're doing, and you're taking Voltology and applying it in a way that people can really, integrate it with their own experience, their own story, maybe what they can work on to let a function that they might have an antagonistic relationship with come to consciousness. And you don't want to force that, but you want to be aware of maybe the way that your brain is working that isn't always serving you the best way and is throwing you off of balance in your life. And I can definitely see that for myself. There's a lot of words I would describe myself with, and balanced is not one of them. And I was like, when I think of SI, I think of like a groundedness, a settled, like my husband, sorry, I'm a little froggy today. My husband is an SI Dom. He is an ISTJ, and he is so much more like settled and calm. I would say, like, I thought it was really funny how Auburn at CT, he did a video recently about the SITEs, and I think he at some point referred to them as like little stumps. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, they're stumps. They're skeptical. They're very hesitant to jump on the bandwagon or change their minds or be pushed into a decision. And I can make a whole another video about that. But anyways, I am not a very grounded person at all. I really don't like to dwell. I like to live in the moment. And I think part of that is because I have had a lot of trauma in my life, really just spanning my whole life. It's kind of been a shit show. But I also, the way I deal with it, I've mentioned humor before, but also there's a lot of, okay, this happened. The next day, I'm going to be picking myself up, the bootstraps, and framing it in the context of this is a lesson I can learn, and I'm not going to dwell. I'm going to, squeeze those lemons, make some lemonade, learn a lesson, and just carry on with my life. And then another way I thought about this is that I do compartmentalize. I don't know if I said that right, but you understand. Like if a negative, painful experience happens to me, I'll give myself a certain amount of time to process it, and then I want to all right, let's close the lid, learn our lessons, let's move on. I don't want to dwell. And then the experience will almost be like lost in the fog of time. Like I will literally forget moments in my life that were meaningful. And sometimes I will start feeling sad. I will start having memories come back seemingly out of nowhere. And then I check my Facebook memories, whatever, and I'm like, oh, right. Like, this is that time where this happened 2 years ago. This is why I'm sad. But I won't even realize it. Like, I just don't. And for instance, this past year, I was probably trying to distract myself as the anniversary date of my daughter's death was approaching. And my really close friend um, sent me um, a gift in the mail. It was like this beautiful rainbow heart sun catcher. I literally didn't even make the connection, guys. I was like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. I love it. And then she was like, yeah, I just thought it would be a meaningful gift because of, and I was like, oh, yeah. Like, so that's kind of how it would look practically for an INFP to heavily favor their NE at the expense of their SI and become more untethered from their roots, more, well, certainly open minded, which isn't bad, but we all need to have a sense of groundedness about us. And I feel like in my own personal like imbalances, I feel like there is a lack of groundedness. I'm just really, really go with the flow, and then I can just go overboard or be too quick to jump into something without thinking, which I do quite a bit. Which, I mean, it's not all bad. Like, I have a lot of experiences. I reach out and connect with a lot of interesting people, which I really love. Um, but sometimes, you know what? Like, it's at the expense of this sense of groundedness from your past and lessons learned. Like, you need to have a balance in your life. And um and another thing that happened, I wasn't really sure if I was going to mention this, but when I came out as an INFP or an FINE on Quora, someone left a comment that to the effect that they were like, they already knew because they could tell I had been in an FI-SI loop for a while, and they just didn't want to say anything because they thought it would be rude or whatever. And honestly, that was a little bit offensive to me. I didn't respond because I think it is, well, I mean, let's be real, it's possibly human nature to be studying people that maybe we find of interest or curiosity, and possibly assessing their mental state. It's like, whatever. But if you have made a very impersonal, almost like secondhand, right? If it's online and you're just observing someone's online activity and you're making such a personal assessment of their mental state, I would keep that to yourself or reach out to them privately and frame it in in the context of like, hey, are you okay? You seem like you're struggling a little bit. Like that. So anyways, there's definitely more food for thought for me of how to integrate SI in a more healthy, balanced way. And I mean, this is what this is all about, right? It's like being on a journey, one of my favorite words. But another thing, so, I think I'll link Jay's video on SI because there's a little bit of like muddiness with the definition of SI where it gets mixed in with a little bit of JE or JI, because SI is really, it's a perceiving function. And it's associated with being aware of what's going on internally. And I definitely see that as a weakness for myself, where, like, for example, if I'm not feeling good, if I'm feeling a little bit tired, my attitude would 100% be like, I'm just gonna drink a bunch of coffee, take ibuprofen, and just power through it. And then that can obviously lead to a sense of burnout, and again, not having balance in your life. And I do, so like in thinking before I made this video, I was like, there's been times where I felt like I was honoring myself in a more balanced way, paying attention to my internal cues, giving my body what it actually wants instead of trying to punish it into submission. And I feel such a sense of peace and well-being when I do that. So I'm going to make a concentrated effort to pay more attention to some of those SI signals and honoring that introverted perceiving function to bring more balance to my life, my psyche, and just fostering a greater sense of well-being in general. So anyways, guys, if you've listened this long, thank you. Thank you for coming on this journey and for the wonderful comments that you guys leave. Again, this is super personal, like it's somewhat self-indulgent, and I'm always self-conscious about that, but I can only speak from my own experience, and hoping that in, kind of like bearing my soul or being really willing to be vulnerable, it will help whoever's watching to do their own work to better understand themselves and bring more of a sense of balance to their lives. And right now, my focus has just been through the avenue of voltology, which is super interesting to me. And again, it's really like a springboard for these other interesting things that you can do with it, where you can tell, just having someone who knows what they're doing look at your voltology of like, wow, you're really avoiding your SI and your psyche, things like that. So anyways, I recommend checking out Jay's work, and I'll see you guys again soon.